It's all over. It's finished. The Nintendo Switch 2 is doomed to fail. It is not going to sell well. It's going to barely have any software. It is just going to be the failure of a console. This is some of the rhetoric that I've been hearing around this console right now. I've watched a few videos online that have said that Nintendo is going down the same path that they did with the Wii U. And the Wii U, of course, was a massive failure for Nintendo. People are saying, well, Nintendo doesn't usually do sequel consoles, right? They don't do like, a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3 kind of situation. They always completely reinvent the wheel, which I can understand. The Wii U was really not that long ago. So I could understand the fears that people would have of saying that, well, they're doing that Wii U thing again. They're doing that sequel console. The Wii, huge success. Wii U, huge failure. So therefore, it must be true that Nintendo Switch, big success. Nintendo Switch 2, guaranteed failure. This I totally disagree about. I totally disagree with this opinion. And I will go into those reasons why right now. Nintendo has always nerfed their consoles. They've really never been the biggest, baddest guys on the block. Like, they've always been a little bit behind, especially in recent years, right? I think the only consoles that you can point to and say they were way ahead of their time was the Super Nintendo and the GameCube. You could argue that maybe the 64 was ahead of its time. However, that I would say that the 64 was actually not ahead of its time, specifically because they failed to adopt the CD-ROM. They did not want to use discs. They wanted to use cartridges still. That was a huge mistake on Nintendo's part. Way too expensive to produce, all for the sake of piracy, and Sony just stole that generation. But Nintendo had a developer or a programmer, I forget what his title was, but his name was Gunpei Yokoi, and he's basically responsible for the Game Boy. He's kind of the father of the Game Boy. And he was saying at the time, look, all these people are making these really expensive handhelds, right? They're backlit or they're color, and they require like 6 AA batteries. It's just a nightmare. And then nobody can make games for these things. Like, it's way too complicated. People understand this like dot matrix style. You can whip out a game in like a couple days on this thing. People know this backwards and forwards. Let's stick with this. Let's be safe. And let's just pump out a ton of games for this console. And he was ultimately right. The Game Boy beat every handheld console on the market at the time. Now, I would argue that Nintendo still holds that philosophy. I think that people see 4K, 120 frames, and they say to themselves, wow, Nintendo is now competing directly with these other consoles. No. You think that the Switch 2 is as powerful as a PS5 or an Xbox Series X? I mean, will GTA 6 be coming to this console? Probably not. Nintendo is still technically a generation behind. They're kind of playing in the mid PS4 kind of generation right now, right? Like they're kind of going for that PS4 Pro kind of in between time zone thing, whatever. So I would say no, they're not doing that. Also, a big thing I've heard is that Nintendo is famous for innovation. They're always trying something new. They're always pushing the boundaries, like with the Wii, with the motion controls. They're like, this is some crazy stuff, and I understand, you could look at the Switch 2 and say, well, it's kind of just more of the same. But I would say that Nintendo does not have a good track record of balancing innovation with, like, what the tone of the market is at the time. So while like the Wii U is a great example. I'll use that as a comparison here. They said, great, the Wii is a huge success. People loved it. Let's just make it more powerful, and we'll add this gamepad thing. And that'll be sort of the new way that you interact with the game, and it'll be great, and it'll be that. Well, they clearly weren't paying attention because the iPad was on the horizon. And I'm so sorry, but whatever gamepad you're willing to whip up is not going to compete with an iPad. It is just not going to be as sophisticated as that. So it's always just going to be a lesser iPad. So your general public is just going to go with what the best product is, which is the thing that Apple created. And then you're just kind of left in the dust, which is what happened with the Wii U. People just said, gamepad, don't really care, don't want it. Hardcores don't like it because it's too constrictive. I have to use this all the time. I can't just use a Pro controller. The casuals don't even understand it. Sometimes your innovation will get in the way. You can over-innovate and be ahead of your time. I mean, people will say that about the Wii U right now, that it wasn't appreciated back in the day. I had a Wii U the entire generation, and I'm here to tell you, I have turned on my Wii U since having a Switch, and it is like, oh my God, this thing is so cumbersome. Like, it takes forever to get going. I just want to turn the game on and play. I'm so used to the Switch. You just turn it on, boop, play. With the Wii U, it's like, all right, it's got to boot up. All right, it's in the Me interface thing. All right, I've got to select the game. Okay, now the game has to like load in, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it takes forever. It takes like 30 seconds to a minute to just get into the game. The Switch is 10 seconds. So speaking of, I guess, that would be why I would say the Wii U had failed. Ultimately, the controller, and at the time, everybody was just off the heels of the 360 and the PlayStation 3, and so online was the name of the game. Like Xbox Live, PSN, people playing Call of Duty online, like that was the number one thing I remember everybody was looking forward to. A stronger, better online interface. And then Nintendo's like, here's a gamepad, and it's like, what? Like, really? Like, I just remember all of my friends at the time giving me a hard time about wanting a Wii U because they're like, dude, it doesn't do anything that anybody wants it to do. Why would I buy it? And it's like, well, that's hard to argue with because there are things that I myself wish that it would do that it does not. And so ultimately, the only people that bought it, like myself, were people that were passionate about the software that was coming out for it. That was literally all you're going to get out of it. So I think that the market conditions right now are very different than at the end of the Wii. At the end of the Wii's life cycle, and I had a Wii the entire generation as well, it blew up initially. The casuals, the grandmas, everybody was just obsessed with the Wii for like 2 to 3 years. It was just a huge thing, right? It blew up. But then it kind of started to tank. Like, you'd see them in Goodwills. They were really easy to find. Like, nobody really wanted them. And ironically for me, that's when all of the best games started coming out for the Wii. That's when we got things like Donkey Kong Country Returns. That's when we got like Epic Mickey, which I loved at the time. And like Kirby's Epic Yarn. I love Kirby's Epic Yarn. Like, I would say the games more closer to the end of the Wii's life cycle were the ones that I kind of preferred. The very beginning, it was all this motion stuff. The Wii Sports and all that. That's fine, I guess. I get it. Or like everybody like wanted to buy like fishing and hunting games, and it's just like, okay, I guess. But I don't know. I only started getting into the Wii towards the end of the generation. And by the end of the generation, the tone that I felt from most people, including myself, was that, okay, we did the Wii, we did the motion control thing, we're kind of done. We're ready to move on. Let's see what the brand new next console is going to be. And they're like, it's more Wii. And it's like, dude, that's exactly what we didn't want to see. That is the opposite of what we wanted. We wanted new. Like, if they would have gone from the Wii to the Switch, that would have been a 1-2 punch, and it would have been insane for Nintendo for those 2 console generations. And so I say that to make this point. Right now, the tone, at least for myself, and I think a lot of other Switch owners, is that if you were to say to people, hey, do you want more great games for your Switch? Or do you want Nintendo to just make a totally brand new system that's not like the Switch at all? I think you're going to hear from most people, oh, we just want more powerful, better running, great games. Like, just keep going. That's my feeling. Like, I remember when Nintendo started talking about announcing the successor to the Switch, and me kind of saying, no, I'm not ready for a new console yet. I love the handheld, portable home console hybrid that they've got going right now. This is perfect. Like, I was afraid they were going to say, okay, here's just another home console again. It's just a black box that's going to sit next to your TV and it's just not going to do anything. I was horrified that that's what we were going to get. Thankfully, it wasn't, and it was exactly what I wanted, which was just more of what's working. It's just a more powerful, better running Switch. And for me, it's like, oh, perfect. From my experience, anything that Nintendo does is either too crazy or it's too boring. If it was a home console, people would just say, it's too safe, it's not wacky enough, like it's not innovative, it's just a box, bleh. But if they go too wacky, like the Wii U, or if they go way off the wall like that, then you're gonna say it's too wacky. And it's like, well, I want it to be a little bit more safe. For me, the Nintendo Switch model right now is the sweet spot. There's no reason to change from your current business model. I mean, what other company in the world would you go to and look at last year's revenue and say to yourself, well, we're not doing as well as we were the year before last, but our software sales are really great. Our software sales are great. We're making good money. You know what? This whole Switch thing is just done. Cut the water off. Stop the flow of money. Let's just go. Let's make a game console that you wear on your wrist like a watch, and you do motion controls, and then it does like a weird projector thing on the. People would go, "Are you crazy? You had a huge success with the Switch. Why are you changing it up? Why have you totally left that value behind? You've abandoned your values here. You're just, what are you even doing at this point?" So it's like, no, the smartest, most conservative yet innovative choice, the middle of the road choice, is to say, let's do another Switch. However, it'll be real beefy. It'll do 4K. It'll do 120 frames a second. That'll appeal to the hardcores. But we'll also add this weird mouse mode thing, which will be sort of our innovation. Our new Joy-Con will be our innovation. And so you can play like a computer on a home console. Because I'm sure that they're smart enough to know that a lot of people now, their gaming setup is not what it was 10, 20 years ago. I feel like most hardcore gamers do not have their Switches or their home consoles plugged up to their TV in their living room anymore. Some of us might. I myself personally do still. But I would prefer to have a nice office where I've got my desk, and on my desk I've got my PlayStation 5, I've got my computer, and I've got my current Switch or Switch 2. That would be the way that I would want to do it. So that way I can work and I can play all in the same environment. Especially having kids, you don't want them to just pull the Switch 2 off the counter and be like, what's this? And it's just like, no, don't touch that. So I think that Nintendo has realized a lot of people are doing that now. A lot of people are putting Switches on their desk, especially younger people. They're probably keeping an eye on those younger people. I've seen a lot of I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I like to watch those gamer girl desk setup things where they make it all cozy and they make it look all nice. And they usually have their Switch there. They usually have their Switch hooked up to their PC monitor. And so Nintendo's thinking, well, hey, a lot of people are putting Switches at their desks. Just make the Joy-Con a mouse. That's a whole nother thing you can do this whole generation, to where we can add a whole lot of like, you know, new games potentially to our console that we would not normally have.
So basically what I'm saying is that Nintendo is paying attention. I think they know what they're doing. I think that I think they've got their hands on the pulse of what gamers are kind of doing and how they're using it and what they're wanting to do. And I think they're also trying to like not rock the boat. Basically, no. The Nintendo Switch 2 is not just a Wii U again. And just because Nintendo is continuing with the legacy of the Switch with the Switch 2 does not mean that they're not willing to continue to innovate. I mean, they may not be innovating that much with hardware right now, aside from the mouse mode, but at the end of this generation, if they have not released any crazy, you know, stellar titles, then maybe you've got a point. But if we get a massive 3D open world Mario that could have never been possible on the original Switch, maybe the innovation this time is coming from the software, not the hardware. And Nintendo may be just upping the hardware to support their dreams of software. Now, I would like to remind you that Nintendo has done a successful sequel to a console before. It's called the Super Nintendo, right? I can remember, like, when I was a kid, everybody was saying, well, what's the Super Nintendo? They're just going to sell us the Nintendo 3 in, like, 2 years if I buy this. Like, you know, that was sort of the whole mantra then. And I will admit, the Super Nintendo did not sell as well as the NES. And I'm going to claim it right now. The Switch 2 will not sell as well as the original Switch. It just won't. Not only because it's more expensive, but because it is sort of also the same thing again. Now, I may be wrong, and there may be games so good on the Switch 2 that it pushes, like, console units into the homes of everybody. You never truly know. We will have to see. But my guess would be that the Switch will be the giant breakout seller. I mean, the Switch right now is the second best selling console of all time, I believe. Didn't it? It went past the DS, I believe, right? It did not get quite up to the PS2, but it's close. It's gotten close, and they're still selling them. So you never know. Hopefully it does. I would love to see the Switch take the top spot, but it probably will not, because it doesn't have a disc drive, and it wasn't. You know, that whole DVD thing was just, I mean, I remember my uncle bought a PS2 just because he wanted a DVD player, and it was the cheapest one on the market. Never bought a game for the whole console. So I would rather a dedicated game console be number one. And the Switch is nothing but that. No one else is using the Switch for anything other than games. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. It's difficult to condemn an entire console when we don't even know, like, all of the games that are coming out for the first year of its life cycle. I don't know. I'm not that worried about it. I don't think that you need to innovate all the time just for the sake of innovation. Sometimes, doing what's working really well and doing what your customers want is the best thing to do. I don't want anything but a Switch. I love that form factor. I love the handheld style. If they had announced some crazy off-the-wall thing, I might have not even pre-ordered it. I might have been like, well, I'm just going to stick with the Switch. I've got a large back catalog. I'm just going to play a lot of that old stuff and just I'll get the new thing whenever I get time. But because it's exactly what I want, I'm going to try to get one as soon as humanly possible. So I think that what Nintendo's doing here is smart. If they give us 2 years of this at the end of the Nintendo Switch 2 life cycle, if we're all done with it, we're just like, okay, let's all move on, then let's do that. But let's see what this console generation has to offer us. Let's at least get a quarter of the way. Let's at least get like maybe 2 years into the life cycle before we start to judge it. But anyway, I don't know. What do you think? Am I crazy? Am I stupid? Like, do I not know what I'm talking about? Is the Nintendo Switch doomed to fail? Am I completely wrong? You know, are all these pre-orders just bots to sell this on eBay? To sell this on eBay? I mean, just, I don't know. You tell me. Post a comment down below and, you know, let me know. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Do you not care about the Switch? If you don't, why are you listening to me? I'll talk to you later. And as always, everybody out there, take care of each other.